Hello and welcome to episode number 97 of the WP Café show with me, Keith Devon, and my co-host, Mark Wilkinson. This is the WordPress show all about WordPress development and running a WordPress business, especially a small one like ours. Welcome along. Good to have you here. If you are watching along live on YouTube, do say hello in the chat. We love that. And also your comments and questions as we go through today's episode are always welcome. You can find us on X at WP Café Show or online at wpcafe.show if you want to check out other episodes. And please do consider dropping a like or subscribing to us either on YouTube here or on your podcast player of choice so that you don't miss any future episodes. We did pick up a handful of subscribers last month. I got the YouTube stats through in an email. So thank you to our and welcome to our new subscribers. Today we've got a few little bits and pieces to chat about. I think the WordPress space has been fairly interesting of late. There's been a few interesting developments and the kind of WordPress core and some of the extensions that are coming our way, some of the APIs that are coming our way. There's been some stuff in the ecosystem that we talked about last week, like things like Etch and things like that, and Jamie's new podcast with Kevin Geary. So there's, I don't know, it feels like there's stuff going on in WordPress, which is good. And then for us also, we are finally about to start building this project that we've been talking about for, it seems like, the last year. So design sign off pretty much today, and then we're taking over from there. So I'm really looking forward to get started. But first up, Mark, how are you? How's your week been?
It's been okay, yeah. Apart from my squirrel problem in the loft, which is doing my head in.
The vermin. Yeah,
I have a squirrel in the loft. I don't think it's more than one, and he's annoying me because he decides to have a. Well, he's been branded it. Apparently, he's called Boris, according to my wife. But
Boris,
he likes to have a rave about 2 a.m. in the morning, and then he has a rest after that, and then gets up again about 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
So we have some traps in the loft now to try and remove him, shall we say?
Yeah.
I know. Hopefully, that'll be successful.
Good luck.
We'll see. That's been dominating my week and my thought process, as it would.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's been good.
Good. I'm enjoying
Yourself?
some. I got back on my bike for the first time in ages. I haven't been cycling much over the summer, which is really annoyed me.
You. Yeah,
it is unlike me. Combination of weather, other stuff, and also just feeling a bit rubbish for the last month or so. Like August was not a write-off. Like I didn't take any days off work or anything because of it, but I just didn't feel good. Like physically, had a bit of a cold that just lingered. So I finally got back on my bike yesterday. Went for a little spin with a friend in the sunshine. It was absolutely glorious. It made me remember why I love doing it so much. So that was good. And then today, gorgeous blue skies, bit cold, but the sun's still warm. So yeah,
it's nice here today. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day. So we've got a few things to discuss today. I think the main one we'll get to first is what looks like some kind of native content modeling within WordPress coming our way. I don't know if that's going to be a core thing or a plugin thing, but that looks pretty cool. And then we've just got another couple of things to talk about. One, kind of migrating some content for this new website of ours that we're building, and a few other little bits and pieces. So let's get started. As always, again, if you've got any questions or comments, as you're watching along, please do chuck them in the chat, and we'll do our best to incorporate them into the show. Mark, what is going on? What is a content model, and what should we be getting excited about?
Well, I'll leave it for you to decide whether we should be getting excited about it. But this was something that I saw. It's been a bit of a collaboration between the WordPress.com team. And I think Brian Cords was invited to take part in helping to develop something. And the idea being was that they wanted to be able to create custom post types, their associated metadata. They focused on meta, not taxonomies, but this could be extended to work with taxonomies. So creating post types, creating their associated metadata, and creating the layout for the demo only showed the single post view, but this again might be something you could use for the archive as well. And having it entirely done within the site editor. So the idea being that there are no dependencies needed here at all. You don't need any other plugins to do this. You just need this create content plugin. And once you've set everything up using this plugin, you can then remove the plugin. You don't need it anymore. It's a bit like the create block theme plugin where you use it to do development and then you can get rid of it because you've set everything up.
Cool.
So the way in which it works is you install this plugin and then you start to create a new content model. And essentially, you're in the block editor or in the site editor, and you're creating a layout almost in there. And you tell it which post type you want to create. You give it a name, a plural, a singular name, etc. And you can then start to define the layout of your single post. Now, the difference with this, and this is what is actually really quite cool-ish, is that all of the data that you're creating, so let's say the obvious examples are like team member post. So we have data for the name, description, an image for their little headshot, LinkedIn profile, email address sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can define all those in the site editor and have them saved as metadata. So they're not saved in that block like a traditional block. They're saved in metadata in the post meta table. Okay. And then they're pulled into wherever you've placed them on the page. It uses the block bindings API. So it just binds these things to the content areas that you've defined and so forth. There's a few extra bits that they've done as well. I think they've allowed a group block to be like a placeholder for the content of that post. So like the content, so you can put any blocks in it basically when you're editing like the person's post. So there's a few bits and bobs like that. The really cool thing that it does, obviously, then is it locks that. So when you go and create a new post in your new content model template, you've got this layout that you've created, and the user can just change those different things you've set up. So they can type the name, they can type the description in, they can change the image for the one that they want, but they can't change the layout. It's all locked, so which is cool. And the real benefit is because it is all saved as metadata. If I go back and change the original template and move everything around and everything, then it always references that. So it would update all of those single posts. And also things like, because everything's saved as metadata, you could do an import, for example, and just save everything in the correct meta field, and it would then import all those and drop it in the right place, and it would all look cool. Yeah. So that's, in a nutshell, what this does. I'm sure you've got some questions, because I don't think you've seen it, have you?
I saw the tweets, and I think I started watching the video. I was distracted at the time. I was doing other stuff, but I thought it looked interesting. So are you saying that? So you can create a custom post type. There's a UI for actually creating a custom post type within it.
Yep. Very, very basic. Like you can just set the plural name, singular name, and maybe the slug of the post type. But you can do that. And
then to edit that post, you create this. You create the single template, and then you add the data directly to the template. But that template controlled somewhere else, like a page template.
So the template. So when you
the design of it,
the design of it is controlled. So when you add the plugin, you get this content model menu on the left-hand side, and you press Add New. What you're essentially doing at that point is creating a new post in the block editor. You're in the site editor, and that post is where we store the information about the post type that you're creating.
Yeah,
and the layout you put on that post is the layout for that single post type that you're creating.
And that is the way it works. Like you can't separate like the content, like the kind of data view of the single post from the kind of display from the template view. So you couldn't create that template to be really minimal, just to like put telephone here, email here, blah blah blah, and then have a single template that's more designed.
No, the idea is you design it in the block
Okay.
editor,
Okay.
and then you bind it to the different data elements that you want to
Okay.
use. So the other thing that the plugin does is once you've created all these content models, as they call them, you can export them as JSON files. So they're all just JSON files that you can export. You can then import them to another site, and all of those things will be in place on your other site. Then you can remove this plugin because you don't need it anymore. All the post types have been created and everything's there and so forth.
Okay.
Would you want to keep those because you might want to make changes to the post and so forth? Potentially, but maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But it was an interesting approach, similar to the sort of create block theme approach, where you can use the site editor to create things, bind things, and then you can kind of export that, and then you don't need the creation plugin anymore, if you like. It's all set in files and so forth. And then you can version control those files, etc., etc., which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I like it.
I think it's good. I think it's good that, well, what am I trying to say? So there seems to be a shift now that I feel like 12 months ago, the project wasn't really interested in agencies. They weren't bothered about what agencies, all these issues that we've talked about and we continue to talk about on this channel, there doesn't seem to really be an appetite to solve them.
Yeah.
Whereas I do feel now there suddenly seems to be an appetite to solve some of these issues for agencies. How do we update content globally? There seems to be solutions trying to be put in place to fix those. This seems to be one of those solutions that is trying to work for agencies who can then, use it maybe.
That's interesting because I actually see this the other way. I see this as something that's been lacking from an end user point of view. Like if I run a cooking website and I've got like a blog of recipes, I need to be able to create that as a separate thing. It's not a page, it's not a post, it's got a different data structure, different, and this is going to allow those people to do that. We already have the tools to do this stuff. I don't really, we all know that there's a plugin called Custom Post Type UI. We all know Advanced Custom Fields does stuff like this. So I don't really.
This is my point.
Or we could just register with PHP without using a plugin. Like developers know how to do this already.
And this is my point. Like you said, if I'm running a recipe site, I probably still wouldn't use this. And this is my point. I'd probably use a recipe plugin that does all this for me. You know what I mean? And I think it's good that they're starting to do these things for agencies. But for me, they're so far behind the curve with all of the things we always talk about on this show, whether it's Elementor, whether it's bricks, whether it's advanced custom fields, generate blocks, keep going and listing them all. I can't remember what they are, but they're all so far advanced of what this is. And I know it's a prototype. I know it's a test and an example. It's never going to do everything. But I just feel I'm not going to use it because it's just nowhere near as good as what those solutions already give me. So it won't actually do the job. So for me, if they're going to really jump into building these things, they kind of need to go all in and build something that's as good as what they already have, or else you'll never get people to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you might be right. I was thinking, what is this going to replace for us? But potentially it's not even supposed to do that because Elliot has commented saying, I think the point was, how can we do this in the site editor? I saw it as an experimental process, an experiment to test what the APIs are capable of. Like, is it a hackathon kind of?
Yeah, I think that was part of it.
I think
it was obviously because it uses the block bindings API. It relies on the functionality of that. So you're still bound to only being able to use those, is it 5 blocks that support the block binding API?
Yeah.
Button, paragraph, image. Can't remember.
Yeah, there's not.
I don't know what they are, but there's a few, isn't there? There's a few that you can use and a few that you can't use. So you're still only bound to those. And maybe part of it was thinking, well, what's missing from the block bindings API so we can take this further? And then maybe they can develop that, obviously, because when you don't have a real world example of what you're doing, maybe that makes it easier heading. Thank you. Makes it easier to sort of see, well, what we're missing and what do we need to build.
On the on the GitHub page, it says the Create Content Model plugin builds upon our custom post types project at the CloudFest Hackathon 2024.
Okay.
So it was obviously a project just to kind of test things and like a little, yeah. But obviously with a real world use case at the end of it, like this is potentially very useful for end users. And it is interesting that this is a WordPress.com thing, not a .org thing. So this isn't the .org team playing with this stuff. Interesting that Brian was involved. I wonder if it's just because he was at that hackathon. Or I wonder if,
I'm not sure. But yeah, so I came away thinking, yeah, it does look really nice and really smart and really cool, a bit of tech, but actually I can't really use it because it doesn't really do the stuff we need that sort of stuff to do anyway. So we're still going to stick with ACF because that does the job. So,
and I don't think, looking at this, I don't think it is something people were expecting us to use. It is a look what's possible, and maybe it's actually this is actually quite good. Let's keep going kind of idea rather than here's a finished product. We're like sign up now. It doesn't appear to be that at all. You can, interestingly, on the GitHub page there, so github.com/automatic/create-content-model. There's a button to try it in the WordPress playground, so that'd be quite fun. Actually,
it didn't work for me every time I clicked that. Oh, it seems to work now. I got an error last time, and I got a white screen of death the time before. So this is the first time now stood here when I've pressed that button that it's actually done something.
Yeah, it says it's preparing WordPress for me. Yeah, I'm logged in. So I've got content models, view all content models, add new content model. Very cool.
And you can export them, So a cool little experiment, I think.
It does show, I think, and I think all this stuff is showing kind of where modern WordPress is going, and the reason that we're going through all this pain is for tools like this eventually. And you could argue you didn't need to go, we could have done all this in PHP, but I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's cool. It's cool. Like you said, it's not really solving a problem for us right now.
No. And I
don't think we're certainly not the .com target market. So
no. Interesting piece of kit though. And have a play with it if you've not had a play with it. It's worth having a look at and see how it works and so forth.
Yeah.
Anyone listening that's used it, got some comments about it. It'd be nice to hear what you thought, whether you agreed with us or whether you thought it was rubbish or whether you thought it was awesome. It'd be nice to hear from you. So that was that. That was I watched that was a live show that Brian did off his own bat. I don't think that was a WordPress.com video. It was just him. I've been involved in this, and I want to show people what it's about. So
cool.
That was a good little live YouTube session. If you haven't seen that, you can tune in on Brian Cords' channel, which you'll find very easily on YouTube. Where's the show notes gone? I've lost them. There we go. So next is about migrating content. So we've got this project that we're currently working on, and the content is elsewhere. So we had a call this morning, didn't we? So do you want to talk a little bit about what that entails? That'd be good.
So it's a website with somewhere in the region of 300 pages, I think. Not to mention the blog posts or the news articles and things like that. And the team kind of running the project are using a tool called SlickPlan for the content. To basically, I think it's kind of like a sitemap generator stroke content gatherer kind of tool. So all the content's going in there, being added and signed off, etc. And they asked the obvious question: how can we get this into WordPress as easily as possible without like copy and pasting the whole thing? And it turns out there was a SlickPlan plugin for WordPress, its own kind of importer. So they sent me the XML file. I uploaded it to a blank WordPress installation, and it was decent.
Right, wasn't it?
It was like, it worked. Suddenly I had 300 pages on my WordPress site. Some of them were in draft and some of them were published. So that was one of my first questions, is like, is there like a content status in SlickPlan that controls that when it comes to WordPress? It sounds like there is. Although in SlickPlan, there's more statuses or different statuses than there are in WordPress. So they didn't all match, like map across, maybe
It just
correctly.
defaulted to publish, didn't it? If it didn't know what the status was.
Initially, I didn't think it had got the page hierarchy correct, but it had. So there were lots of pages that were at that kind of root level, but then there were like child pages and grandchild pages. So that all came across pretty well. The page slugs came across, I think. I think that they add those in SlickPlan and they come across as well. Haven't tested that. That's something to test. But I guess the most interesting thing was just the content. So we knew that it wasn't going to come across and it was all going to be beautifully blockified and, you know, we don't need to touch the page. We knew that we're going to have to go and edit the pages once they come in. But the very first one I looked at, it was all in a classic editor. Well, I can't remember what they call it. WYSIWYG block or what do they call that block? I can't remember. But basically,
like the classic WYSIWYG block, or what the classic block it's called. It's
like
kind of changed that now because it just comes across. It doesn't really have a name until you press. Was it like edit or something, and then it comes up in a pop up, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I've never seen that before.
No,
I always used to come in a classic block before.
So I could see the content, then I click on the content, and it shows it's in that kind of block, and then you click edit, and then it's a pop up, and you can edit the HTML that's been. Oh no! Then it does show in the old WYSIWYG, basically, doesn't it?
Which is just rendering the HTML, basically.
Which is fine, exactly. Yeah. And then, so there was a convert to blocks button. I hit the convert to blocks button, and then things didn't go so well. So there were a bunch of blocks towards the bottom, paragraphs, lists, things like that. But the top ones the top section just came across as an HTML block. And inspecting it, you can see a bunch of divs with loads of kind of classes and various style rules and things. So yeah, it's that kind of age-old problem of like this has been imported from something that has markup behind the scenes that potentially nobody sees. You know, you copy and paste. You don't see any of this as you're copying and pasting, and then it kind of goes down the lines, and we've got all this extraneous markup that we don't want in there. So that's a challenge that we're going to have to.
But what was encouraging was that it seems as though that content was in the same place on every page.
Yeah, it was always at the top.
It was all at the top, like the first two elements. So it's obviously those have been copied from somewhere. And when you press convert to blocks, it made them into two HTML blocks. I don't know why it was two, but it made them into two HTML blocks. And we could see some markup wrapped around. One of them was a heading, essentially. It was just a heading. That was all that was in the block, but it was wrapped with some divs. And when you remove those erroneous sort of divs and other elements, you could then press convert to blocks again, and it just converted it to a normal heading block.
Yeah.
So with a little bit of cleaning up, it was quite good.
The client did hint towards the end that she thinks it's because she tried to style it a little bit like a hero.
Yeah,
like she wanted that to when she in SlickPlan, she like was trying to kind of make it look a bit more prominent, so that I guess when people are reviewing the content, they kind of get a feel. So I think that's probably what it is.
I find it strange that these tools like SlickPlan allow you to do that, because surely the whole point of them is that you're going to put this content somewhere else. So why would they want you to be styling it in there? Because it's going to go somewhere else, which is not going to use that styling. So you would have thought these tools would either in the export strip them out or just not allow you to do them, because it doesn't make sense, which is a bit odd.
Yeah. Interesting. The other thing that comes up is that she's used like heading levels like visually and not semantically. So we had an H1 on every page, and then the next heading down was always H4. So that was a bit of a moment when we're like, those are all going to have to change. I mean, that's fine. I think there's all the pages are still going to be edited.
Got a good question from Exlam. Says, does it import the images on the pages to the media library?
I don't know.
No.
I don't know, actually.
I would be highly impressed if it did. I don't think it will. However, when we did this a couple of years ago for a project, what it does do is it will convert it to an image block, because it just uses the URL of the image when it was stored in the source, in this case, SlickPlan. And then it's actually quite straightforward to go, and obviously it requires some human intervention, but you can go and sort of like copy the URL to the original, open it up, drop it onto your desktop, replace image, push it back in, and it's quite good to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite tricky to import them all to the media library, I think, but
it has pulled in what looks like 3 images and about 7 PDFs
in the media library.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it was them. Even better. I'm impressed if it does.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool.
That is very cool. It does.
So yeah, I mean, promising, but there's always work to do. You know, there's always a bit of tidying up to do. And like obviously, we're going to be designing and creating page templates, stroke patterns for this content, and obviously none of that exists yet, and there's no way to import directly in those patterns that I know of. Like, so.
No, it'd be very difficult to put
that
content into the blocks that we wanted to go in. I think that can be very difficult.
Yeah.
But like I say, when we did that one a couple of years ago, it was a big help to get the content into the editor, even if you then had to go in and start fiddling with it.
Definitely.
So what we did at that point was we just created a spreadsheet with all of the pages and the content, and then each column in the spreadsheet was like a checklist item. You know, so have you dropped in the content and styled it? Have you set the page title correctly? Have you set the slug correctly? Have you added the SEO title, the SEO description? Have you done a redirect if that's necessary? Added the featured image, added the excerpts, all those sort of things that you need to, that kind of you don't see on the page. So you need to remember to check them basically. So we'll do that on this time as well. And then we can tick them all off and get all the content in eventually, which is good.
Yeah, it's good. Next up, Mark, you put a point for conversation, upload images from iPhone.
Yeah, just something I saw on the latest, which there's 2 things, just something I saw on the latest what's new for developers. I'm not quite sure why that's for developers, but I thought it was a useful thing, really. I mean, how many times have I done that? Like you drop something off your iPhone and it's got that weird HIEC, is it called? Or HEIC, something like that. And then you can't upload that. Well, there's a new, I think it's coming in 6.7, or is it here now? I can't remember, but it's certainly on its way if it's not arrived. So you can just upload images straight from your phone using that format, and I presume it will convert them to a web format, which I thought was really useful.
That was Johnny Harris at the Spaced Monkey who did that, and there was some pretty interesting follow-up conversations on X about that. So got a little bit unsavory actually, which is just ridiculous.
Why?
So basically, Johnny said, "Is
that not kind of useful?
Hey guys, I've been working on this thing in my spare time that's going to be really useful for millions of people that use WordPress." And a few people took the opportunity on Johnny's celebratory post to trash the fact that he was working on that and not more important things. It was it got a bit nasty, and Johnny got upset, and I jumped in and told everyone to wise up. Basically, it really annoyed me. But yeah, there you go. So the lesson is, if you have general beef with WordPress, don't express it on someone's celebratory, here's what I'm giving back to the project post. Do it separately. I think that would be my takeaway. But yeah, thank you, Johnny, for your hard work on that. And he does a lot of cool stuff. I
think that'd be useful for a lot of people that, not necessarily like developers, but people just like runs the website and like, 100%. Why can't I just upload this picture off my phone? It doesn't make sense.
I think people always, and we're probably guilty of this as well, people need to realize that like people use WordPress in so many different ways. Just because it doesn't solve a problem that you have doesn't mean it's not useful to an awful lot of people. So yeah, it's great. So yeah, no, that was definitely a cool one. I saw that. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. He kind of announced that he'd been working on that. So very cool. Customize heading levels and blocks, Mark. What do you mean by that?
Well, it would appear that you can, when you're using a block, I think it's in a pattern. It's a while since I read this and added it to the thing, but you can say that the user can't choose like H1, for example. So you can customize the list that's available on the dropdown, which I think particularly for H1, that's quite useful because you probably don't want them to choose a H1 except for that very first block, which, I mean, I don't know how you do that with, like, you can on one block and you can't on another, but it's worth reading up about because I just thought, oh, that's interesting. We kind of need we need more of this stuff, I think, where you can really fine grain the interface to work for clients, you know. So the example shows like they've just restricted it to a H3, 4, and 5. So when you're in a particular pattern or a particular block maybe that you've made, you can limit the use of that. So again, I haven't really read up about how it works, but it just caught my eye and I thought, oh, that's interesting. An interesting use case, which is actually probably quite useful, again, to quite a few things.
I think it'd be generally useful just to disable H1s unless you're in the template editor.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
But yeah, very cool.
Potentially. I think I'd like to see a lot more things like that. It was interesting in the demo that Brian was doing when we talked about content modeling, because when you're editing the template, the way in which the single post looks, like the source of truth for that, the one that everything references, you could obviously, I think he had a group block and it had like a background color on and so forth, and that wasn't editable. So when you add a new post, it drops these blocks onto the page, and obviously you can just change the blocks that are bound. So you couldn't change the color of the background. The thing is, you could. The interface was still there to do it, but when you made any changes and press save, it just didn't save them. So again, it's just little bugs like that where the editor needs to be a bit more robust when you're setting these things up. But again, I don't know the technicalities of how that's done, of course, but those sorts of things would be really good to refine. So this kind of fits in with that, I think, where you can just make the editor interface a little bit nicer. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, just caught my eye.
Yeah, very good. Very good. I think we can wrap up there. We've done a few long shows recently, so I don't mind doing a slightly shorter show back to half an hour. That's all good. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please, as always, consider dropping a little like for us. It does make a difference, apparently. Not that we really kind of care about numbers or anything. We're not tracking anything like that. Or do subscribe if you do want more content like this. You will get notified, I think, in your inbox when a show comes on if you subscribe on YouTube. And obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, make sure you're subscribed on there too. The other thing we never ask people to do is share this.
No.
Please do consider just, I don't know, retweeting whenever you see the tweet. It's not a tweet anymore, is it? The post on X and things like that, because we do have a small audience, but it's nice when there's a few people hanging out and the chat gets going and stuff like that. So if you do find these shows useful at all, please do consider sharing with your own network. There might be people there that like the show too.
Just before we go as well, one other plug for my talk at WordPress London meetup, which is at the end of this month, Thursday the 26th. Both Keith and I will be there if you want to go. It'd be nice to see everybody. My talk is on our move from projects to products. So
nice.
Get yourself booked on. It's on meetup.com.
Yeah, nice one. Until next time, guys. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.